Having these in here for some reason feels super wrong. Like, I don't know why. Hi guys, I'm Diva, I'm a Libra if you haven't been here before, and so Diva the Libra, hence happy you're here. Today and for the rest of this week we are going to be doing some reading because, I don't know, like sometimes I just feel like so invigorated and if you hear me talking like this, I have my retainer in right now so I'm lisping a bit. I also think I may just have a lisp in general. I'm honestly never sure. This is sidebar, but I had braces because I had to my teeth. I feel like my tongue was near the front of my teeth. Anyway, that was such a sidetrack. Anyway, I went to the library last weekend and I've said it so many times at this point. I moved somewhere recently. One of the favorite things I love to do when I move somewhere recently is get my library card. And I love living in like a county, especially where there's like multiple branches of library and you only need one to like go to like multiple of them. And I found these gems. So what I'm really just going to be doing is reading this week, and I hope you guys will join me as I do. I'm not sure what book I'm going to start yet. I also got the Lesbian's Guide to Catholic School, but I finished that a couple of days ago. I gave it about 3 stars. I thought the premise was really compelling, and I felt like I really got easily lost in like the beginning of the book, especially like Yamilet's voice as a narrator. I feel like the pacing of the plot got really awkward around like the 65, like 70% mark, and then it like really lost me there. I also feel like this was a case of where the dialogue felt really awkward at times, where I understood exactly like what I felt like the author was trying to get across, but at times it felt like these feel like characters just trying to like move the plot along as opposed to like actually having a conversation. But these are the other books I got. There was Funny Story, which I was shocked to see in the like newish library that I went to. I think I was just shocked that like nobody had picked it up like before me. I know like libraries like pre-order like new releases all the time, so they have them when they're released. I think I've said before, my relationship with Emily Henry's work has been like a mixed bag. I read Beach Read 1.5 years ago at this point, and I was honestly really underwhelmed by it and a bit like I found it really lukewarm. I was a bit bored towards the end, and I read Part of People We Met on Vacation, and I DNF'd that. Oh, under breath. I also just took a shower, and so it's kind of hot in here, and I have door closed. So you guys can see how messy my room is. But I read Part of People We Met on Vacation, and I did DNF that, but I feel like I would pick that up again during the summer maybe because I attribute that less to like me not liking the book, and more so at that time I had just read so many second chance romances. We're in the past, we're in the present, we're in the past and the present, that like I couldn't do like more of that like stylistic like twist anymore. And so curious how it's gonna pan out, but like Beach Read has me a little bit like apprehensive because I think part of what I also didn't love about that book was just like chemistry between the characters, and so I feel like that's, yeah. Then there's Hench, which I took out last year because I've heard it like likened a lot to the boys universe. The concept just sounds really compelling and interesting about a woman who works as like a henchwoman for like a supervillain just because it like she doesn't really have like any skin in the game to say, but like just because it's like more profitable. And then she gets involved because she gets involved after like a traumatic event apparently that happens with the superhero, and so I'm just like so curious. I think this is gonna be my first read during the week that I'm gonna start tonight. Ooh, The Girls I've Been. I remember hearing that this was going to be adapted into a movie with Millie Bobby Brown, and so I remember that's why that also caught my eye. But even before that, I've just really heard really good things about this like author's work and their tone of voice when it comes to like YA contemporaries, and especially like this book is like more on like the I guess like thriller-ish like action like mystery vibe while like also having like tangents of romance and like coming of age elements, and so I'm like curious about that. Trouble with Hating You. I saw witty banter on the back of this and I said, oh my god, witty banter. The thing about witty banter, because I love banter in books, but it has to be done like so right for me. I don't think that's also lost in a lot of romance books for me when it comes to banter, is that it's not funny enough. Banter is supposed to be funny. Like it can't just be quick-witted like jabs back and forth with one another. It needs to be in some way be humorous. Like that's what I feel like what banter is. Otherwise it's just like barbs at one another. And so I heard that and I'm curious. I've also heard, I feel like this like I've heard good things about it. But I know this author has another book, but I've heard better things about this one than I have about the other one. So Open Water. I feel like I just need to be in the right mood to read this book. I don't know if that right mood is like now, or I'm gonna end up like renewing this read past this week and I don't end up getting to it. But I think when I saw this on the shelf, I just did not know how short this book was. And so I was like, Diva, pick this up. And so I did. And so I'm like, I feel like I need to be in the right mindset to read though, because I've heard that the prose is like very lyrical on the more poetic side. And so yeah, truly madly deeply. Again, Diva, how many times can you say it? I've just heard really good things about this one, but I truly have. I've heard that the chemistry in this book is like really good, as is like the banter. Those are the 2 things I've heard distinctly people talking about it since like Truly Madly Deeply and Funny Story are both like new releases. Again, I shouldn't be so shocked that like the library had them, but I think I was more shocked that nobody had picked them up like before me. And so like, support your local library. We love the local library. I honestly want to try also getting to this one because this week possibly, because like I'm just curious. But also like there are so many books like in this stack right now. Am I gonna read these all in this week? I don't think so. So we'll just kind of see like what I start off with, like what I end off with. And like if I don't finish this, this week, of course, then there'll be another reading log and we can hang out some more. Aren't you excited? I'm excited. My mom brought home seafood, yes. So let's have dinner first and then I'm gonna do some reading. One thing you guys should know about me is that I do not play with seafood at all. Okay, I just finished chapter 1. How long was it? It was 68 pages. While reading it, I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was like, well, this is kind of long. I think I'm just so used to reading like shorter-ish chapters, like ending in the teens or like 20-page chapters, like tops, but this was 68 pages, which felt like a lot, but it also really started, like, I don't know if you guys saw my face, like, no spoilers, but I feel like I kind of alluded to it when I was like talking about like the blurb synopsis of this book. Oh my god, that was brutal. So this is like vague, but we start off with the main character, Anna. She works like I thought for a what a good also like setup chapter for like the world universe that they live in. They're superheroes, they're supervillains, but it kind of seems like no more different than our world so far. We're only at the beginning, of course. And she works for like a temp agency that matches you working with like supervillains is like whatever they kind of need. That's like not that violent. That's what she does. I feel like it set up the stakes really well so far. We've already kind of gotten the gist, I feel like, of like honestly where this is gonna go. So much happened in this first chapter. We skipped Time Sun, which I feel like confused me a little bit at first. When we first meet the main character to like a couple pages later, like some time has passed and then more time passes and more time passes between these little kind of like paragraph breaks. But once you get used to it, it's like not that bad. But like, oh my god, the end was like a whirlwind. I can already see like where this is devolving and I'm really curious. I feel like the writing, it's been so long since I've read like a fantasy, to be so for real, that it took me a while to like, when I was reading like the first couple pages of the first chapter, I had to go back and be like, okay, this is what happens here, what happens here, what happens here, to like really invest myself like in the world. But I feel like now that I'm invested, I don't know, I just don't know if you guys could see my face while I was reading. I was like, like, oh my god, like you're even angry, like you're angry for the main character herself too, as upset she is as well. I do wish maybe the chapter, I feel like this chapter could have been split into two, to be honest. It could have been split around like the 30-ish like page mark, and like this could have been like 2 chapters. But I don't hate it at all. It makes me wonder though if this was just like the vibe of the first chapter, if it was just as long because they were really setting things up, like the world building and like who she works for and like who her friends are and stuff like that, and like the other chapters are going to be shorter. But I'm not sure. It made me, I mean, the thing about a fantasy dystopian like that kind of vibe is that the first chapter is supposed to get you like hooked. It's supposed to get you interested, and that did that. I don't know, I'm like so horrified for the main character. I'm just imagining like that injury, and so I feel like I'm gonna leave it here because I feel like I keep reading now, I'm not gonna like stop, which is like a good sign. I feel like right now I'm just very interested to see where things go, which is a good feeling to have after a first chapter because I have work tomorrow. And that's the thing about working a 9 to 5, like slipping in where you can read is difficult, but I feel like I'm like fully out of this like reading slump that has like plagued me like the beginning of the year kind of, and it feels so good to be out of it. Okay, good night guys. Okay guys, let's jump back into it. I have washed my face and showered and like brushed my teeth and all that, and wearing my retainer again because I have been like so like not intentional about like cleansing my face every day, and like that is, I guess, like my very late like New Year's resolution. But let's get back into this. And honestly, I'm probably going to read one more chapter because if they are as long as the last one was, I feel like I need to keep it to that. And it's also like fairly late. Like if I started this earlier, I maybe could have read multiple. Probably honestly could have gotten through like a chunk of the book. But since not, and it's like kind of on the later side tonight. And again, I have work tomorrow. We're probably gonna read one more chapter, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay, I stopped at the beginning of chapter 4, which is page 168, which these chapters are long, which I don't think bothers me like anymore. I've gotten used to it. But I do think it's just like interesting. It's just like long passages of time happen in these chapters, and I don't think until somebody says something, I'm like, oh, like by chapter 4, Anna has what she's now doing. She's been there for like almost a year has passed, like since her injury, like 11 months, and it doesn't feel like that. And so I don't know, like I feel like could that be mediated by like the chapters being split up and like it being more clear that like the passage time? I'm not really sure yet, but it's so, oh, I love me a good anti-hero, and I that's obviously what's happening here. And just the character study of like what is like a villain or like an anti-hero's like origin story, like that's basically what's happening with Anna. I think what's interesting to me here is I was trying to put like my finger on like what does this kind of remind me of, like even outside of like the boys. It kind of reminds me of just, if you guys watched the, like when Marvel had that like mini series, what I honestly I'm of the opinion of was their best work in recent years, Jessica Jones and like Daredevil. And Jessica Jones in particular, I feel like they asked this in Daredevil too, but it's really the question of like, as necessary as these superheroes are, they leave so much destruction in their wake, especially like when it comes to like New York City, like people dying and like casualties and like cars flipped over, and it's like, who are you allowed to be upset at when they maybe like kill your son by accident because they were trying to like stop an alien from like destroying the earth? And that I feel like questioned is asked in Jessica Jones a lot, and that's also being asked here, where you completely understand the like anger that's like festering inside Anna, but at the same time it's like they're the villains. But it's also like on one hand you're like happy that she's like finding purpose in her life, but it's also like you're talking about kidnapping somebody. You don't even really feel like maybe like the guilt is slipping away, and that's like as a reader really interesting to read. But at the same time it's also like, oh Anna, like what's gonna happen next as you like lose more of your morality. The writing I'm vibing with. I like it. But I feel like what I'm just most interested right now, I'm going to stop here for the night and then continue probably during my lunch break tomorrow, because tomorrow's also going to be like a really nice day, so I might take my lunch break outside. Who knows? But I said it before, I love to see like the good like involvement, I guess, of like somebody like turning into I guess this is like, you could say like, is this Anna's worst self or like her best self? Like something like brutal happened to her and she wasn't given like any compensation, any acknowledgement. Like they tried to like gaslight her to be for real that it even happened what happened. And so like who wouldn't become like villainous either? But I think like with all of this, she's also like losing the grip on like what she's still doing is like evil. But it's like, I love some nuance. I love like when things aren't like necessarily black and white, and this is like a good story for that. However though, this is only like the middle of the book. Like, this is where I am, the middle of the book it seems like, and so I still have more to read, more to get through, and I feel like the latter half of the book and how this all pans out will really determine also how I feel like about it in its entirety, of course. And so that's it for the night. I'm like tempted to read one more chapter, but I do have to go to sleep, and so good night. Okay, I just got off of work. I didn't get to read during my lunch break like I wanted to because I just ended up having to do like other things. But 5 o'clock just hit, so I'm off the clock, and I'm going to take probably an early dinner now, and then I'm going to jump back into Hench because I did not stop reading when I said I was going to last night. I read a little bit of chapter 4 because I ended at the end of chapter 3, and the stakes are, I thought they're honestly gonna get really like, they could get higher, but like I didn't think they could get like dramatically higher than this. But like this is very much like a shift in tone, I feel like, of the book. Like things are changing, maybe gonna become a bit more darker, I'm not sure yet. I feel like yesterday I was really like, Anna was doing some stuff that I was like, oh, I know this is really bad, but at the same time I understand like why you're doing this and why you feel incentivized to, like really torn. And while I am still torn, and I'm sure like that's the purpose of this book, like I will be torn as the book progresses, I don't know, something happened in the last chapter where I'm like, Anna, I'm standing a little bit more behind you. Even though as like a main character, she's like an enjoyable voice to like read from, like I was behind her already, but it's more so in the sense of like, damn, you guys keep giving her reasons, which they talk about in the book a little bit. I don't think this is a spoiler. I feel like in like supervillain canon, this is just like known, but like how superheroes in themselves, like it's like the chicken or the egg. Like the superhero villains came first and the superheroes were there to defeat them, or the superheroes came first and then supervillains were created. But yeah, like I feel like I was gonna film myself last night, but it was like too late at that point where I was like, oh my god. So yeah, let's finish. Let's go eat. Let's go eat first because I'm hungry. Hi guys, it is Thursday morning because last night I finished lunch when I was outside. I ran an errand with my mom, and then by the time I came home, it was just like, maybe this is just like adulthood and like working, but like this lethargy just like came over me that like I like crawled up in the middle of my bed. I was like, okay Diva, you're gonna shower, like wash your face, all that stuff. And I did end up showering and like, brushing my teeth and stuff, but then I woke up afterwards and it was like 2 in the morning and I was like, I'm gonna do this tomorrow. And so it is tomorrow, Thursday morning, and let's talk about Hench. Let's first talk about the good things, which is, first, I liked Anna as a main character. I liked her voice. I felt like it was really well crafted and the characterization felt like strong. She was funny. Yeah, the book was like not lighthearted, like corruption, like brutalization, but at the same time, Anna kind of brings that kind of a sense of like, well damn, to the book that is both like relatable and also just like compelling and interesting as like a main character. Two, for the big cast of characters, they were both diverse in like race and sexuality, which is just like nice to have. Anna must suffer for like found family, and so like I said before, Anna kind of alludes to the fact that like her childhood was like a really shitty one, and so as these characters like band around her, like come to like appreciate her, and she finds like purpose like in her job and like doing evil. I guess it's kind of weird to say it was like a nice thing to see. The writing I just felt was like strong. There were some parts that felt like it really lagged in the middle in terms of like, I on one side like the fact that when the way time passes in this book, this whole book I feel like happens over the course of like a year and like some months, which is a bit strange because it doesn't necessarily feel like that all the time, which is both one of my critiques, but also at the same time I'm like, this book being so long, especially in regards to like Anna living with this new disability and like recuperating from being like terribly injured at the hand of like a superhero, both felt like really realistic, because if like things had been like snap 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 snap, snap in terms of like time, I would have been like, what's going on? So I think that was both like a negative and a positive as I'm thinking about it. And overall, just the concept of this book is just so interesting. I really enjoy the idea of like the nuance between like good and evil, and like I think I said before, like this question was posed a lot in like the Marvel universe and like Jessica Jones in particular, of like, yes, superheroes are like necessary, but like do they end up creating supervillains because of like the crap they do? Like let's say a supervillain is like racing down the street after like a robber or something, and then they end up like throwing a car and it like hits a pedestrian, that pedestrian is like paralyzed, which happens in like something very similar happens in this book. And so does that say like all superheroes create like all supervillains? No, I thought that was kind of a flattening of that in this book, which is like, that's something Anna is like really harping on, which I'm like, that can't always be true. Like not all superheroes create all supervillains, but that's like to another point. What kind of has me like is the ending of this book, because one, up until the 80% mark, I feel like I was really vibing with it. Last 20%, like the chapter before the ending, is when things start getting tonally really strange. Because these chapters are so long, the body horror in this one chapter was so long that felt just like really tonally different from the end of the like the rest of the book. This is not to say like brutalization or like other really dark things like did not happen in this book, but this was particularly like gruesome, and it just kind of left me like, I don't know, like quirking my eyebrow, like, whoa, this doesn't feel like a different book, but this definitely feels like a path I really wasn't expecting it to go down, and I don't know if I think it's just because it lasted also like so long, because the chapters are like, it could be up to like 60-ish, 80 pages. It was like, it felt on, it went on forever. Like another point, the supervillain that we encounter in the book, like the big bad, like we don't know a lot about him. Like a big part of his thing is that he's kind of like shrouded in mystery, but we start to know enough about him to know that like he's a very layered character. And on the other end, the big superhero that we meet, not me saying he's not nuanced or layered, but like he started to feel like a really flat caricature of like, can you tell I struggle saying that word, of like evil towards the end, which just felt like not necessarily like boring to me, but more so just like I expected a little bit more, and I hope to see that in the sequel, just in the sense of like, hey, if somebody's evil, they're evil. Like we don't always need like an explanation or anything like that. But I think with all of the other kinds of like characters we had gotten to meet who got a lot of like screen or like page time, we met that they were like kind of like nuanced, like fleshed out characters, and he wasn't necessarily like feeling like that as much, but it kind of left like the ending very disappointing. And then to the ending being disappointing, the last chapter of the book is like on the shorter side, which both left a little bit to be desired, and it kind of left like, it felt like the book was like rushing itself to be like, okay, to be continued, and then learning, which makes sense because learning that there's going to be a sequel to the book makes complete sense, because like the Hench, what people are calling it, the Hench universe, is so interesting that I'm like, yeah, I would want to read like more stories in this universe. At the same time though, this book really felt like a, what's it called? Standalone? Like, I don't know, there was something about it that just really felt like a standalone. And even outside of that though, the ending very much, like I said, it gives like to be continued vibes, where yes, like books that are the intro to like sequels and like series leave on like cliffhangers, but I do think it could have ended in like just a little bit of a neater way, like closing it on like some things while leaving some things like left open, which is like to say like a romance is kind of being teased between the main character and like another character that I just like don't want to spoil too much. And I feel like in the sequel, I could get behind it if it's done like really well, to be honest. But in the first book, I feel like something a little bit more should have been set up where I was like, oh, okay. Like, it also depending like how many books are going to be like in the series. Is it a duet? Is it like a 3-part book? If it's a 3-part book, I would be really curious to see how this works over the course of that. But if not, and it's a duet, cautious. And so I feel like that's where it leaves me. Star rating wise, I don't know. I really wish the ending had like left more to be desired, but like the first 75% to 80% of the book was like really strong. So that leaves me honestly at like a 4. Like, I think I'm gonna tackle funny story today. And also you guys are like, damn, doesn't she need to go to work? I woke up early just so I could do this. And so probably gonna tackle funny story today, read it during my lunch break. Yeah, but Andrew's just like, I'm happy that like I finally read it after like picking it up the last time at the library and then not reading it, because it is a book that I would recommend to people. I think personally, if you're interested in that like superhero, supervillain, like the dichotomy between like good and evil, I would recommend it. Okay, let's go to work now because I do have to wash my face. Okay, work is over. I have changed into more comfy clothes. Generally don't know why I keep saying I'm gonna start a book during my lunch break, because I almost like never do. I have sometimes like, but I feel like it's always bad because then if I get interested in the book, I don't want to stop, but I have to go to work, of course. So I did it this time either. And it's like, my phone is charging over there. I'm on the porch. It's like 5:40ish right now, and I'm gonna start Funny Story. And yeah, I love reading on the porch. It's just so comfortable. And so you guys will probably see a lot more of me out here, especially during the summer. I don't even want to think about during the winter or during the fall. Love the fall. But when it starts getting like more chilly and it's like too cold to read out here. But for now, it's not. So let's start. Hello guys. How many times am I gonna say, I went out on an errand for a mom, and then I came back and I got really tired. But I am really tired. And so I got a couple chapters into this. I want to say at least 50 pages. Yeah, at least 50 pages. And I'm just curious. I feel like I'm not far enough into the book to know like how I really feel about it yet, to be honest. This isn't a spoiler at all because it's like in the blurb like that the exes of the two main characters like get together, and those two main characters like start living together. Daphne and Miles were the main characters, and then Petra and Peter are the exes. I think for some reason I didn't expect Daphne and Miles to start living together so soon in the book. Like it starts off pretty early, which is in the blurb, like that they become roommates. So I don't really feel like that's a spoiler, but it just happens earlier than I expected. I thought like it was gonna be more of like a leading up to thing. Maybe that was gonna happen around like in the book, but like just maybe not like so soon. So I think that surprised me a little. But I also feel like this was a good choice, because if not, I'm like on the other end. If it had happened like too far into the future, I would have been like, oh my god, this is dragging so much. Yeah, I don't really have that many thoughts so far. I am curious though, like I feel like the stakes are being set up right now for like what the kind of like conflict or like drama is going to be outside of like what's already been presented like in the blurb. So I'm like curious how that's going to be panned out, because I am worried. Like, I mean, the book, I can't tell if the book seems thicker than it is because it's like a hardcover, but I'm like, how long can this plot be like? Because I think I thought that like part of the story, like maybe like a fourth of it was like the beginning was going to be like her moving into his apartment and like that working out and like it just being like dragged out a little bit longer. But since it hasn't, I'm like, where are we gonna go from here? But that's just a lot of like curiosity, so we'll see. I'll pick this back up tomorrow and dive back into it, and hopefully the weather is nice again so I can read on the porch. Hopefully. But also it's gonna be Friday! I remember when I was like, oh my god, the week is taking so long, but I love me a good Friday, because Friday is like the weekend for me. Like Friday, Saturday, I feel like Sunday is like preparing again to like for the week. Like Sunday doesn't really feel like a weekend. Like I'm blabbering, so obviously I'm tired. Let's go to bed. Oh my god, not me reading during my lunch break like I sat out with this entire week. it is Friday night, so it is the end of my work week, and I'm about 200-ish pages into the book, and this I'm up to the end. Didn't read the ending, but just see how many pages there were in it. There's about like 340-ish, so I feel like I'm like kind of in the middle right now. I don't know why I'm so tentative. When this book's like blurb synopsis was first released, my friend and I read it, and we were like, why am I saying friend? You guys have met her virtually before. Jamie and I read it, and we were like, this sounds so extremely convoluted. Like just the way like the plot like was like written out, we were like, okay, when he said, she said, they go, we said, oh, like, okay, like when he that the whole meme, it just sounded so like convoluted for no reason, to be honest. Even though I was like, okay, like this isn't supposed to be like in any way like this is happening in real life. It just sounded like, will I be able to get behind this like if I read this? Just in like even like a believability sort of sense. But I'm actually liking the execution like a lot more than I thought. It's like grounded in reality in a way that like I'm enjoying. And I like the dialogue between Daphne and Miles much more than I did in like Beach Read. I find, well, not always, I'm finding the banter and the kind of back and forth between them sometimes like just more funny and much more I want to follow along with it that I did in Beach Read. I'm just comparing it to Beach Read because that's like the last Emily Henry book I read in its entirety. So yeah, the thing is, I feel like similarly with Hench though, I'm at a place in the book where I'm like, okay, any things after this are going to dictate how I feel about the book in its entirety. And so I remember thinking like, oh my god, like things are going to go super well for Hench. And then they kind of ended on like a no. And so I'm trying to be positive, but I'm looking, things are unfolding in a way that like has me like interested. I'm compelled. Like I've giggled, I've smiled a few times, but I feel like it's really going to depend on how it wraps up, because a big thing in this book is that I feel like this isn't a spoiler. I feel like part of what is kind of giving me hesitancy is that Miles, the main character of the book, I feel like the whole thing is that people don't take him like seriously. They think he's very like lackadaisy through life. People think he's like a loser, and I'm trying to decide if I mean, we haven't figured out the backstory for that yet. That's still to be discovered. I find him like a lovable, quote unquote, like a lovable loser right now, but I'm trying to see if I'm really seeing the like, there's definitely been like good chemistry between him and Daphne so far. I don't know if like, and it doesn't, like a leading man doesn't always need to like sweep me off my feet for a romance. Like I don't know like how much I like him. But the thing is, I'm only like how much I maybe like him yet. But the thing is, I'm only in the middle of the book, and I feel like not like how much I like him is how much I like him for like the main character, like Daphne, but more so just like I need to be like a little bit more convinced of their relationship. Again, we still have like 200 pages to go in this book though, so let's not be too pessimistic. But I think I just overall like the way this story is like flowing like much more than like Beach Read. Not even like pacing, the tone of that book felt like so off, and that I know it was supposed to be like levied with like sometimes heavier moments, sometimes like more lighthearted moments, but it just felt like whiplash like in between scenes. And then also the whole like you write a sad ending and like I'll write a happy ending. I was talking with somebody about this before, is that like there's sometimes things in book just scream so like plot device to me, which is basically for me to mean like fake dating, for example. I know like fake dating is a plot device. Usually why the characters will fake date is gonna scream like circumstantially you guys didn't really need to be in this position, but you're fake dating for like the sake of the book. The thing is, you just need to convince me to get behind it. In Beach Read, I really could not get behind the whole like you write the happy ending, you write the sad ending. It just felt like a very flimsy like we need them to like be in some kind of like rivalry thing. This whole them like living in the same apartment, at first I was like, and it happened earlier than I expected in the book, like I said before, but I can actually get behind that, even though it seems so very like, wow, that's like kind of crazy. Like the way the book is grounded in reality, I've accepted it at this point. One thing I love is like a good budding like female friendship, and I like the female main character, like Daphne, so let's just see where things go. But it's hovering in like the 3.5-ish, 3.5-ish range right now, which I consider good. I know people consider like 3-star-ish ratings like not great. I feel like the thing is like once I start debating if I need to give a book a 3-star or not, that's when I'm like, okay, then I probably didn't like it and I liked things less about it than I liked about it. I'm gonna read the rest of this tomorrow. And yeah, so we'll check in tomorrow. Yeah, so this is the end of like my work week, but don't go anywhere because I will be back in 3. Now I'll be looking at my fingers. 2, 1. Okay, I'm like a chapter and a half away from being done with this book, and so I feel like I'm maniacal. Oh my god, it's like almost Sunday. Well, not Sunday morning, like it's like 1 in the morning almost as I finish this book because I spent a lot of Saturday outside. So I'm finishing this book now. I feel like I should check in before I finish it and then I give my thoughts in the bathroom, which I feel like I'm now calling like my reviewer space, I guess. But Funnily enough, right before I was about to jump back into like where I left off at this book before, I saw a TikTok, which I kind of scrolled away from quickly at the end because I didn't want to be spoiled. But the guy who was reading it was like, if this book ends with like Daphne and Miles being like, it's kind of a funny story, like how we met, he'll like eat his at or something. And I'm gonna be honest, I never really thought much about like why this book was titled like Funny Story. Like I feel like most of like Emily Henry's titles have been like pretty self-explanatory, like Happy Place, like Beach Read, People We Meet on Vacation. But I really never gave much thought to Funny Story. I think I was honestly so distracted when the synopsis came out by like how again convoluted it sounded, which now in execution, I really do think the execution makes me be like, oh Diva, like yeah, of course the blurb makes sense, but in its entirety, the blurb was really, there's so many, like, when he said, like, she said, go to, they went to the store, like, it didn't make any sense to me. But this is all to say, I never really thought about it, and if the book really does end with, oh, how we met, it's like a funny story. Cliched, but I'll get it. But I want to read the rest of it so I can give you guys, like, my complete thoughts, because I have a couple. So it still feels wrong to have the book in the bathroom, but this has the best lighting this time of night, to be honest. I feel like, well, my room does too, but I feel like it's just easier to do videos in here. But I finished Funny Story, and finished Funny Story about like 45-ish minutes ago, and I listened to some music and just like decompressed as I like tried to collect my feelings. And so let's talk about it though before I like lose track of like the things I'm thinking. And I enjoyed it for the most part, to be honest. Just like writing, pacing, dialogue especially. I really liked the dialogue in this book. I felt like it flowed pretty naturally. I found myself chuckling even a bit, especially as Daphne developed like her own like female friendships. Like I loved those moments. And I feel like what I enjoyed most about this book was just like relatability is not what makes a good book for me. I feel like sometimes I'll bring up that in my reviews to just be like, as a 20-something or like as somebody who's navigating like early adulthood, like to see people who are either like in their 30s or just like navigating life like at their points in time can feel very relatable. Just like feeling lost, like feeling like you should know where you are in life and like not being there. I just love reading stories about that, especially like from female main characters. That doesn't make a good story for me though. What makes a good story for me is when that relatability also kind of taps into making the story like heartfelt, like emotional. Like I don't feel like I'm just like, oh, this is sad because it like touches me like deeply because like this happened like to me or something like that, but more so just like it touches you because the main character is just like getting to you. And there were moments like that in this book, like Daphne's relationship like with her father, like especially this speech I feel like Miles gave at the end just felt like really insightful. The idea that like the you want to be and like the you are, you feel like they're never going to like mesh together. And I think that's the thing that I also said earlier in the vlog, that like how I felt about Miles was also going to determine how I felt about this book. And that's why I feel like I enjoyed it. Something is stopping me from enjoying it a little bit, which is why I kind of have it at like a 3.75. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed how I feel like it really levied like heartfelt with like heavier moments with the, there were certain parts of the book that I feel like faltered, like kind of like not the climax, but like some chapters before the climax where Daphne is coming to like some like really unfortunate revelations. I feel like I understood it, but it also came across as like extremely abrupt, and I was like, I understood it. It was realistic, but I was also like, this feels like a huge shift, and things pacing wise started getting like a little bit awkward around there. Like I was saying before also, I saw some reviews who described Miles as like a loser. Whether he's a lovable loser or just a loser is what I was looking forward to seeing. I don't really feel like this was a spoiler for me. There's something I was like curious about. I mean, like if you look at the cover, he kind of he's slumped over, he's wearing Crocs. Like Miles is somebody who is just very deeply human, and I feel like that's the whole that's honestly like a focal point of the book, is that like people make mistakes, they're not perfect, but there is a part of me that like he was doing stuff in the book and I was like, oh Miles, like oh god please, like don't. And it read as realistic, but it also read as like, this is making it hard for me to root for them to be together like at the end. And I feel like maybe honestly that was maybe the intention, to show that like people, they're not perfect, I want to be with you like now, even if we can be together later, I'm always gonna like take care of you, like protect you, like things like that. But it did stop me from kind of being like, I understand we want this to be realistic, but you can't make it too realistic to the point that I'm like, maybe they need to like separate and heal. And it didn't like broach that far. Like at the end I was like, happy ending, but I still feel like at moments it kind of tipped over into like, do they both need to find like healing separately, like go in their own ways? And so that's where I feel like it like kind of has me like also floundering, like I feel like some of the speeches in this book were a little long-winded, where I was like, okay, this doesn't really feel like the most natural, but usually they would end on a note where I was like, oh, maybe that's something like the reader needed to hear now. I hope Daphne and Miles make it. I don't know if they will. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm honestly really excited to make the journal page for it. Thank you guys for reading with me as a 9-to-5 girly. I'll probably do more of these, to be honest, because I think we're out of our reading slump. Like, I think we're, like, guys, we're so back. We're so back. And I'm so happy for me and for you so we can spend more time together. Good night.